I still remember the exact sound of the rain that evening, soft at first, then heavier, like fingers drumming across the roof of my car as I pulled into the driveway. It was just past 6:30, the sky was smeared with ash-gray clouds, and the wind carried the smell of wet earth and distant honeysuckle. I remember thinking how quiet everything was. No lights on in the front window, no music coming from her room. Just the house, our house, sitting in the storm like it had forgotten me. I got out and dashed up the steps, juggling my umbrella and grocery bags. Then reached for the key I always kept clipped inside my purse, and that's when the first note of unease hit me. The key didn't fit. Not like before. I jiggled it, tried angling it differently. Even checked to make sure I hadn't grabbed the spare to the storage shed by mistake. But no, it was my key. The same one I'd used every day for the past 4 years. I knocked. Lightly. At first, then again, still nothing. I leaned close to the door and called her name. Hey, it's me. The lock's jammed or something. Nothing, I knocked harder. My heart picked up speed, unsure why. Rain clung to the ends of my hair. My jacket was soaked at the shoulders, and my breath made faint clouds in the cooling air. That's when the porch light shut off click, and her voice came through the door like a knife slipping under my skin. You don't live here anymore. At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel one, maybe, but a joke all the same. I stood there frozen, waiting for laughter. For her to swing the door open and roll her eyes and call me dramatic like she always did. But the door stayed shut. Her footsteps padded away. And all I was left with was the sound of rain. I sank onto the wooden steps, hugging my knees, the grocery bag still at my side. Apples, milk, the pasta she liked. I don't know how long I sat there. Time became slippery, like the raindrops sliding down my face, down my wrists, pooling in the lines of my palms. My phone buzzed in my pocket once. I jumped, but it was only a pharmacy reminder. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No. Replied. Eventually, I stopped trying, and then, just when the numbness had started to settle over me like a second skin, I saw movement near the gate. A man in a raincoat approached, handed me something through the metal bars without a word, and walked away before I could even ask who he was. I looked down. A manila envelope, damp at the edges. My name, written in thick black marker. Inside, a formal letter. From a lawyer, a cease and desist, claiming I had illegally occupied private property, and that continued trespassing would be subject to legal action. Private property? My chest tightened. The walls of the world closed. In a little, I read it again. And again. The words blurred. I remembered the framed photo of us in the hallway, the one we took after Mom's funeral. Both of us in black, holding each other like it was us against the world. That picture still hung by the stairs unless she'd taken it down? Erased that too. I remembered signing the agreement after Mom passed, that the house would be both of ours, equally. A quiet, private inheritance. No courts, no drama. Just two sisters, carrying the weight of a home too big for either of us alone. I paid the bills. I scheduled the repairs. I cleaned, cooked, juggled her forgotten rent envelopes when she lost jobs, boyfriends, or both. We were a team, or I thought we were. I sat there until my clothes were soaked through, until my fingertips tingled with cold and grief, until my throat was raw from saying her name without hearing it come back. The streetlights flickered on. Inside, I could see the faint movement behind the curtain. She was there. She was watching me. Like a stranger. No screams. No slammed doors. No big dramatic confrontation. Just silence. Ink. A stranger's signature. And the chilling realization that I had nowhere else to go. My sister and I were never the kind of siblings who finished each other's sentences. We didn't wear matching sweaters or hold hands crossing the street. But we belonged to each other, in a way that felt older than we were, like tree roots tangled underground. Invisible but impossible to separate. She was 5 years younger. Wild-haired, always dramatic, prone to door slamming and grand exits even as a child. I was the opposite, quiet, precise, always trying to anticipate what was needed before anyone asked. Our mother was a solitary force of nature. She raised US in that creaky two-story house with lemon yellow siding and windows that whistled when the wind hit just right. She never remarried after our father left. She just pulled the world tighter around us like a shawl and kept going. The house became her shrine. No loud music. No strangers. She polished the wood floors like they were altars, whispered to the walls when she was tired. And when she got sick, when the sharpness left her voice and her hands started trembling while folding laundry, it was me who noticed first. I was 28. My sister had just turned 23. I had a job offer in Oregon, a nonprofit, doing exactly what I'd studied for. I almost said yes, I even packed a bag, but then the diagnosis came. Stage 4. From that moment, everything shifted. My sister, bless her, tried it first. She'd bring flowers, make soup that Mom never ate. But she faded in and out like a faulty signal. I stayed, I canceled interviews, I learned how to administer morphine. I memorized the sounds of shallow breathing and the silence that came after. And when our mother died, it wasn't in a hospital bed, but on the old linen-covered couch in the sunroom. Her fingers wrapped around mine like she didn't want to take the next step without me. After the funeral, my sister cried in my arms like a child. We lit candles. We played her favorite record. We promised, as people do in the raw quiet of loss, that we'd never leave each other. When the lawyer read the will, it said exactly what we expected. The house was to be split between us. No conditions, no hierarchy. Just 50-50, as if Mom couldn't bear to choose a favorite. Even then, I remember my sister gripping my hand when we left the courthouse. Let's not change anything, okay? Let's stay here. Keep it home.
And
So we did. I unpacked, turned down another job, paid the water bill and picked up groceries. Took on extra hours at a tutoring center nearby. I handled the mortgage, the insurance. She promised to pitch in, and sometimes she did. Other times she didn't, but I didn't push. It felt easier that way, but over time, the small things began to wear thin. She stopped saying thank you. Stopped asking before hosting her boyfriend of the month in Mom's old room. Once, I came home to find her hosting a healing circle in the dining room. Half a dozen strangers chanting around the table, where we used to eat spaghetti on Sunday nights. When I asked her to at least give me a heads up, she rolled her eyes. God, you're always so uptight. Maybe you need healing too. I didn't fight back. I never did. She began calling at her house when friends came over. This is my mom's place, she'd say, her voice sugar-sweet and just loud enough for me to hear. I would force a smile from the kitchen, scrubbing dishes harder than necessary. The turning point, though I didn't realize it then, came the day she got fired from her third job in a year. She came home drunk, kicked off her heels in the hallway and declared, "You'll take care of it, won't you? You always do." That night, I lay awake listening to the wind whistle through the windows, wondering what exactly I'd signed up for. Friends started noticing too. My friend Clara, blunt and perceptive in the way only longtime friends can be, visited one afternoon and asked quietly, "How much of this house do you actually live in?" "What do you mean?" I'd asked, already defensive. She looked around. "You're one step away from being her maid. That's what I mean." Another friend, Marlene, offered me her guest room for a weekend. "You need a break," she said. "This dynamic isn't healthy. She's using you." But I shook my head. She's my sister. That word, sister, felt like a shield I kept holding up, even as it cracked. And yet, despite everything, I never imagined she would turn on me completely. Not like this. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the deliberateness of it. The planning, the paperwork, the cold execution. She'd spent months preparing this, talking to lawyers, changing the locks, erasing me one step at a time until the final blow didn't even require confrontation. No screaming. No fight, just a locked door, a porch light turned off, and a signature on a piece of paper that said, "You don't matter anymore." It came on a Tuesday, the court summons, plain white envelope, no return address, tucked under the doormat of Clara's apartment, where I'd been staying for nearly 3 weeks, quietly becoming the kind of guest who says thank you too much. And cries in the bathroom at night. I stared at the envelope for a long time before picking it up. It felt heavier than it should have, as if the weight of what it contained had already seeped into my bones. Inside, legal language, crisp and cold. She was accusing me of abandonment, claiming I'd vacated the house voluntarily months ago. That I left no forwarding address. That she'd assumed full responsibility of the estate. There were photos attached. Of the living room, rearranged, redecorated, new curtains. A sleek gray sofa that looked like it belonged in a rental ad. No sign of my grandmother's quilt. No sign of me. The bookshelf I built by hand was gone. My favorite chair, the blue velvet one with the frayed corner, missing. The corner wall where I'd once hung our mother's portrait, painted over in white. My bedroom wasn't just empty, it was gone. She had turned it into a dressing room. She hadn't just erased me physically. She'd rewritten the story entirely. And the world, the legal world, was prepared to believe her. I tried to call her. Again. Voicemail. I called her workplace, the boutique. She'd landed a job at after burning through 3 others. The receptionist was polite, confused. Oh. She said you two hadn't spoken in ages. That you'd moved out suddenly after a fight. After a fight, I felt my mouth go dry. That's not true, I whispered. I'm sorry. I was just repeating what I hung up. The lie was bigger. Then I thought. Later that day, I stood outside the house. Not out of hope, just compulsion. The yard looked trimmed. Clean, 2 planters by the porch. Ones I didn't recognize, overflowing with fake flowers. The mailbox had a new sticker on it. Unit AI had been turned into a ghost. I didn't knock. I turned away and walked until my feet blistered. I don't remember how I got back to Clara's apartment. I just remember the feeling of my lungs not working properly, like they'd forgotten how to pull in air. I locked myself in the bathroom and slid down the cool tile wall, curling inward. Hands shaking, I whispered it aloud. To no one. I don't exist anymore. For the next few days, I barely ate. Couldn't sleep without jerking awake from some unnamed nightmare. My chest felt tight constantly. Like grief had become an organ. Clara tried her best. Warm meals, gentle conversations, distractions, but every kindness made me cry harder. I wasn't ready for comfort. Not yet. One night I went digging through the box of things I'd managed to grab before the door was locked forever. Old journals. A chipped coffee mug. A stack of faded photographs I'd forgotten. I'd taken from Mom's drawer the day of the funeral. Among them was one I hadn't seen in years. My mother, holding both of us. Her hair pinned back, eyes tired but smiling. I was maybe 10. My sister. 5. We were both clutching the hem of her sweater like it was a lifeline. I traced the outline of my mother's face with my finger, and suddenly, I could hear her voice. Not clearly, not like some ghostly visitation, but faintly, the way memory does when it's soaked in emotion. One of you will carry the family's backbone. Just make sure it isn't broken first. She'd said it once, during one of her lucid spells near the end. I'd laughed then. Told her not to be morbid. But now in that quiet moment, with the photo trembling in my hand, I understood what she meant. She knew. Somehow, even then. My sister was the flame. All heat and color, but I was the stone. The one that held, and I had let myself be chipped away to nothing. I stared at the photo until the tears stopped. Not because the grief had passed, but because something else had risen in its place. Clarity. Not rage, not vengeance. Not yet, just a quiet, unshakable awareness that I had allowed her to silence me, and that it ended now. The next morning, I made a list, a real one. Pen and paper. It was simple. Find Mom's original will, check deed, records, contact a legal aid. Clinic, retrieve bank statements, get proof of bills paid. Precedent, let her weenie tore off the top sheet and folded it into the back of the photo frame. I didn't have a home anymore, but I still had a history, and I would not let her rewrite it. The ocean air hit me the moment I stepped off the bus, that soft, briny kind of breeze that carries both memory and forgetting. It smelled like salt, rosemary, and something floral I couldn't place. The sky was overcast, but the clouds felt gentler than the ones I'd known back home. Claire met me at the curb. We hadn't spoken in years, not deeply anyway. College friends who drifted. But she'd reached out after hearing from Clara and offered me a place to stay in a coastal town 3 hours away. "It's not much," she'd said on the phone. "But it's quiet. You need quiet." Her house was tucked between two dunes, painted a pale green that had faded with the years. A crooked wind chime hung from the porch beam, whispering secrets to the sea. Inside. It smelled of chamomile, old books, and lemon soap. She showed me to the guest room, a small space with a low window. A single bed with a quilt and a vase of dried lavender on the knitstand. "I never use this room," she smiled. "But I think it's been waiting for someone." I didn't cry until she closed the door behind her. For the first few days, I slept more than I ever had. I walked barefoot in the sand. I sat on the porch swing with a mug of tea and listened to the waves speak in their old, slow language. It was the first time I felt something close to safe in months. Claire connected me with a local bookstore that needed a part-time inventory assistant. "It's mostly dusting and alphabetizing," the manager said, "but we pay cash." That was fine by me. There was something oddly soothing about arranging books by spine, color, and watching the sun spill across the hardwood floors each morning. No one asked questions. I didn't volunteer any answers. Every Thursday, an older woman came in. Silver hair pulled back in a braid, eyes sharp and kind. She never bought anything, just stood in the poetry aisle for nearly an hour, reading quietly. One afternoon, I offered her tea. She looked up and smiled. "You're new," she said. I nodded. "Just moved here." She glanced at the spines of the books. "People forget," she said, almost absently, "that they're allowed to start over." I didn't know what to say. But the words settled in me like seeds in damp soil. At night, I began journaling. Nothing profound. Just fragments of thoughts. Old dreams. Scribbled memories. One entry read. "She said I never paid for anything. But I still have the bank statements. Another. I don't miss the house. I miss the version of me who still believed it was home." One evening, I dug through my cloud drive, a forgotten archive of audio, files and notes, and there it was, a voice memo from nearly a year ago. My sister's voice, rushed and irritated. "Fine, I know the house is legally both of ours, but if you're going to act like it's yours alone, maybe I'll just stop paying altogether." I sat frozen, listening again. There it was, an admission. Proof. I forwarded it to a new folder marked evidence. Then I started digging deeper. Found PDF receipts, screenshots, emails, all quietly preserved. A part of me still wanted to cry. But a different part, a sharper part, began to stir. Claire knocked on my door later that week and slid a flyer under it. A local community center was hosting a free workshop, Understanding Inheritance Law and Property Rights. I showed up late. Hair still damp from the rain, notebook in hand. The instructor, a retired attorney with eyes like flint, spoke clearly, concisely. Fraud, co-ownership, power of attorney, forgery. I took notes until my wrist ached. And something else happened in that room. I stopped feeling like a victim. I started to feel like someone preparing for war, but not with fire. With facts, with documents. With the kind of quiet certainty that scares people more than shouting ever could. That night, back in the guest room, I lit a candle, a small ritual. I'd started to feel close to my mother. I whispered aloud, "I won't let her steal your home. I won't let her erase us." The candle flickered once and held. It started with a box. Claire had tucked it away in the garage, a dusty banker's box with a faded sticker that read, "Kitchen M's stuff." She'd found it among other things I barely remembered packing during those frantic final days before I was locked out of my own life. Inside was a tangle of paperwork, property tax receipts, gas bills, photocopies of my mother's handwritten notes, and a brittle manila folder labeled WILL final copy. My fingers trembled as I slid it open. There it was, my mother's will, typed on letterhead, with her signature at the bottom and a notary stamp in the corner. I read the words slowly, aloud to the quiet room, just to hear them spoken again. The property located at 215 Cedar Ridge, Lane shall be inherited in equal and undivided shares by my daughters, my full name, and my sister's name. There. It was in ink, undeniable. And yet I remembered how easily she'd rewritten the story, told the world I had walked away, that I didn't want it, that she had been the one to keep the house alive. I sat on the floor for hours sorting documents into piles, taxes I had paid, repairs I had arranged, screenshots of emails where I'd offered to cover her portion of the mortgage emails. She never responded to. In a forgotten corner of my iCloud, I found a chain of voice memos. One from 2 years ago, after a petty argument about utility bills, where she hissed, "You think I don't know the house is both of ours? God, you act like you're doing me a favor by living here." I forwarded it to a folder labeled case file. Each click, each saved PDF, felt like laying a stone back into a foundation that had been deliberately cracked. But now I was the one rebuilding. Claire helped me find a pro bono legal team through the community center. They connected me with Marcus, a former litigator with salt and pepper hair, a no-nonsense voice, and the kind of kindness that came without pity. He combed through everything, asking pointed questions, scanning the will, the recordings, the statements. At the end of our second meeting, he closed the folder, looked me straight in the eyes, and said, "If this goes to court, she's going to lose everything she tried to steal." The words didn't fill me with glee. They didn't make me want to scream or cheer. Instead, I felt quiet. Centered. Seen. In the days that followed, I changed, not overnight. It wasn't a movie montage. But, piece by piece, I cut my hair short, not out of vanity or grief, but because it felt like shedding a past version of myself. The one who whispered, the one who waited for permission. I joined a yoga class in the mornings, where I learned how to breathe like it meant something. I joined a grief circle on Thursdays and spoke about my mother for the first time in months. I adopted a rescue cat with matted fur and a crooked tail, and named him Fig. He slept at the foot of the bed, a warm reminder that not all broken things need fixing. Some just need patience. I emailed Clara and thanked her again. This time, I didn't apologize for the mess I'd been. I just said, "Thank you for not making me feel like one." I bought a small spiral notebook, the kind with a cloth cover, and used it to write one truth each day. Day 6. My silence wasn't kindness. It was fear. Day 10. Her betrayal wasn't sudden. I just finally saw it. Day 14. I am still the keeper of my mother's legacy, not her. My voice changed. My posture changed. Even my steps, once hesitant and small, grew longer, more sure. Marcus and I filed a formal response to her claims. Included everything: the will, the tax records, the memos, the evidence. We didn't bluff. We didn't threaten. We simply told the truth, clearly, in the language she had tried to weaponize against me. Weeks passed, and then one morning, I stood at the back door, tea in hand, staring at the tiny garden Claire had let me cultivate. The first bloom of lavender had opened. Small, soft, defiantly purple against the green. It reminded me of my mother's perfume. The one she wore when she was feeling strong, not soft. I hadn't smelled it since the day we closed her casket. I crouched beside the bloom and whispered, "We're getting there, Mom." That evening I found the final piece in a folder marked MISC. Voice notes. My sister's voice again. Annoyed and dismissive. "Honestly, I don't care if she thinks she owns half. She didn't even fight me, she just left. That's on her. She thought silence was surrender, but she was wrong. I hadn't left. I had just gone quiet long enough to listen to myself. And what I heard was this: I am not the woman who sat on the porch in the rain. I'm not the woman who begged to be let back in. I'm not the woman who thought love meant loyalty at any cost. I'm the woman holding the evidence. I am the woman who learned how to speak law, truth, and legacy, and I am walking toward justice." The courthouse smelled like old paper and lemon floor, Polish, sharp, and sterile. I sat outside the courtroom on a hard wooden bench, folder clutched to my lap, breathing slowly. My palms were dry, steady. That surprised me. Marcus sat beside me, flipping through documents like he wasn't about to dismantle someone's carefully constructed lie. His calm had become contagious. It reminded me that this wasn't vengeance. It was restoration. When they called our case number. I stood up without hesitation. Inside, the courtroom felt colder. My boots clicked against the tile floor as we took our seats. Across the aisle, she sat, the sister I hadn't seen in person since the night she locked me out. She looked smaller somehow. Not fragile, just shrunken, tighter. Her makeup was precise. Her hair was styled. But there was something behind her eyes, something that flickered when she saw me walk in beside my lawyer, back straight, expression unreadable. She hadn't expected me to show. Not like this. Not with evidence. Not with composure. When the judge entered and the case began, I listened carefully, not just to the words but to the tone in my sister's voice. When she spoke, she used phrases like sole caretaker and abandoned property. Her lawyer parroted terms like voluntary relinquishment. But then Marcus stood. He handed over our packet. Inside, the will, the deed, the tax records, the recordings, the emails, the voice memos. Even photographs, one of us sitting together on the porch, signed lease agreements in our hands, smiling like we believed in permanence. The judge flipped through each page with care, frowning slightly. Then she looked at my sister and asked, "Did you knowingly misrepresent co-ownership in order to take sole possession of the home?" My sister flinched. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I didn't think she would come back." The words echoed through the room like a stone, dropped in still water. The judge's tone grew firmer. What followed was a quiet unraveling. No yelling, no dramatic outbursts. Just the slow, factual collapse of a story built on omission and arrogance. After a short recess, the ruling was given. This court finds that the property at 215 Cedar Ridge Lane was jointly inherited.
The
defendant, having knowingly concealed documentation and removed co-inhabitant belongings, is ordered to either return 50% of the current appraised value or restore joint access to the home. Silence followed. Not even my sister spoke. Outside the courthouse, the sky was soft and gray, the kind that threatens rain but never quite delivers. My sister caught up to me on the steps. Her heels clacked against the stone like an afterthought. "You've ruined me," she said. Her voice was trembling, not with rage, but disbelief. "You couldn't just let it go?" I turned to face her fully for the first time. "No," I said quietly. "You did that when you forgot we were sisters." She blinked as if the words stung more than she'd expected. Then I walked away. I didn't go back to the house. I could have. Legally, it was half mine again. But something in me knew returning would have been a way of tying myself to something I'd already outgrown. Instead, I took my share, and I found a small stone cottage by the sea. It had peeling white shutters and a crooked chimney and a garden out back that hadn't bloomed in years, but I saw it not for what it was, but for what it could be. I named it Willow's Rest. My mother loved willows. Said they were the only trees that cry and survive. The weeks passed softly. I painted the walls a pale green like the saffron just before sunrise. I planted lavender, rosemary, and forget-me-nots along the back fence. I framed the will, not for pride but remembrance, and tucked it in my office drawer. Beside the folder of evidence I no longer needed, I adopted a second cat. Fig now had a friend. They napped in sunbeams together like they had known peace all along, and one evening I hosted a poetry night. Not big. Just 6 women from the grief circle and the bookstore. We sat on cushions in the garden, sipping wine, reading verses that made us feel alive again. One woman cried, another laughed. A third recited a line I now keep above the kitchen sink. You don't bury grief. You plant it, and one day it blooms into truth. The wind picked up, and the chimes Claire had gifted me sang gently over the sound of the sea. As the sun dipped low, I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and breathed it in. Not just the air, but the moment, the stillness. The strength. And I whispered to myself, I wasn't locked out of a home. I was freed from a house that forgot what love was. And in losing it, I found something I never expected. Myself. My name is Anna, and this was my story. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved, if you've ever stood at a locked door holding a useless key, then please know. You are not alone. Share your story in the comments. I'll be reading. Don't forget to subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like mine, because healing begins when we speak.